one and all to Talking with Tom and Jim. Above me are Tom Goldrup and Jim Goldrup, and they are film historians and actors and writers and world travelers and have the craziest stories. And so that's why we are Talking with Tom and Jim. So welcome, you guys, to your show. And next to me is another man whose last name is Goldrup, and it is not a coincidence. Ray Goldrup is next to me. He is our special guest tonight, and me, and he is Tom and Jim's brother, and a very accomplished screenwriter. And so I'm excited to have you here and have all kinds of questions, which we will never have enough time for. And so we were talking, and I wanted to ask tonight about the television series Gunsmoke. So you wrote for Gunsmoke, and it had such a long run that I'm assuming you guys were all, I mean, I know, I'm not assuming, I know you were huge Western fans as kids. And so I want to ask you how it was writing for something that you watched as a younger you and admired and was a fan of, and then suddenly you're in this world creating for that. How'd that feel and how'd that come about?
Oh, when we were kids, like you said, our whole family gathered around, and my brothers and I, and our mom and dad, and we loved that show. So over the years, I got to know the characters quite well. And so when I started writing for that show, I didn't have to research the show and ask what kind of stories I'm looking for. I already knew, and I realized that they allowed quite a diversity of story. No two were ever really alike in any way, so that kind of excited me. That I thought, well, then they would permit fresh ideas up to a certain point, as long as you kept within the bounds of the characters, and you could go places that there were no places in Kansas really like that. Kansas is a pretty flat state, and so when I wrote one, it was up in the mountains. So Marshall really had a long ride on his horse to get to where he was going, I guess. But yeah, I started with Gunsmoke. I love westerns, like you mentioned, and I'm trying to think where the best place to break in regard to all of that.
You were saying that you wrote one episode that they really liked, but something with the doc, or they couldn't use it.
Right, Jeff. That was the first Gunsmoke I wrote and sold. It was called Saga of Benjamin Brown, and it was quite lyrical, not commercial, like no commercial TV show. I mean, difference is okay, but it was way out there on a limb. But I didn't know any better. That was the way I wrote. I never took any classes in writing. I graduated with an acting degree at BA degree at San Francisco State College, and I didn't want to and I met this beautiful girl, and she's something else. A swan of the upper current, I like to call her, because she's feisty, and so we got married. And I thought, well, I can't drag her through an actor's life in LA, just starting out. I had to make money, and so I got another job. I never was really happy with it. And one day, after a number of years, my wife said, "Ray, why don't you write? You seem to do that better than anything else." And then she helped me suddenly realize how I could figure it out for myself, that that's what I always really wanted to do. And here she was backing me up. One thing about Marilee, all during my career, during our hard times and every other time, she stood by me. She stood right by my side and encouraged me. I had arrived at one point where I picked up my electric typewriter. I was so frustrated one day, and this is when I lived in California. I literally was ready to throw it out the window, but the window was closed. So there, the broken glass, and she said, wait, before you do that, consider this. The window's closed. It's the only typewriter you have, and in 2 days from now, you're going to hate yourself when you wonder why you did that. And so, bottom line is, she was always there for me, and I don't think I could have made it without her loving and support. So anyway, what was I saying? Get my mind back on this side of the South 40. Yeah, I wrote a Gunsmoke and sent it in, and it didn't work. I got a call from a story consultant named Jack Miller. Said he doesn't normally call writers if the script doesn't work. The secretary, he sends it back. But he said, your writing is unusually good. Very, very good. It just wasn't quite on. It's quite lyrical, poetic. This is Gunsmoke, and it wouldn't quite play right. And so I'm going to send it back. But I want you to know, like you said at the beginning, Jeff, keep writing. Because Jack said, don't stop writing. And so anyway, I went out in the garage, sat down, and told him my cat. We were going to us. We named him Job. Job, because from the Bible, we expect problems. But I asked the guy upstairs, I said, Heavenly Father, I said, we're really counting on this. We don't have the money, and we're going to have a baby born. If only some way this could work out. I don't know how, but then I got the feeling as if someone stepped into an ocean on a cold day, and the water was warm, and I just felt a warm rush like a wave. It just swallowed me up. And so, I knew that was. I told our cat Bojangle, I said, "This isn't over yet, Bojangle. It's something. It's not over yet." A couple of days later, I got a call from Jack again, and he said, very embarrassed. Said, I've never done this before. It's not professional. He said, but I was ready to send your script back. The secretary was leaving my office with about 4 or 5 scripts under her arm to send back to the respective writers. He said, words came out of my mouth. I had not planned it. It surprised me when I said it. He said, wait, hold on to Goldrup's script. Don't send it back. Send it upstairs to John. Send it upstairs to John. And John read it, loved it. And Jack, so Jack told me, he said, we're going to buy it, Ray. He said, don't know how it's going to work, but John does. He said, it's going to be the first blank verse Gunsmoke, but he loved the writing. John was Canadian. His whole family was. They were actors, traveled in shows. And John, I guess, I can't remember the writer he compared me to, but it was a real compliment. Because in my normal speech, I don't sound like that. So he actually when he had me down there, he actually asked me, did you write this? I said, yeah. And I said, it just comes out of me. I don't speak that way in public. But he just said, it's beautiful. And so anyway, we got the money and paid for a little Job, and la-di-da, and all was well, except they weren't able to produce it because Doc was the major primary regular in that particular episode, and he had a bad heart attack, and he's lucky he survived. And for the rest of his life, he had serious heart problems, and that was a very demanding part, and so they couldn't do it. John hoped somehow to be able to do it later. He didn't want to lose it.